A wealthy guest kicked me to the ground at my sister-in-law's party while I was 7 months pregnant, and everyone just watched. They thought I was just the help. They had no idea I was the wife of the man who owned everything they could see. And his revenge was about to turn their entire world to dust. My name is Chloe, and I need to tell you what happened because it changed my life forever. I've been married to my husband, James, for 2 years, and at the time of the party, I was carrying our first child. James is the kindest, most wonderful man I've ever met, but his family, they're a different story entirely. He comes from what people call old money, and his sister, Victoria, is the kind of woman who has never worked a day in her life and is proud of it. From the moment James introduced me, I could feel their disapproval like a physical chill. I wasn't one of them. My father was a high school history teacher. Victoria especially made it painfully clear she saw me as a gold digger. When James was in the room, she was the picture of a perfect sister-in-law. The second he left, her mask of civility would crumble. So when Victoria announced she was throwing a lavish birthday party for herself at the family estate, I was filled with dread. James promised me it would be fine. I should have trusted my gut. 3 days before the party, James was called away on an urgent business trip overseas. I promised him I'd still go to the party without him, just to keep the peace. It was a mistake that would nearly cost me everything. On the day of the party, I drove up to the sprawling family mansion alone. Victoria greeted me at the door with that bright fake smile I'd come to despise. "Oh, Chloe, so glad you could make it," she cooed. "Listen, I hope you don't mind pitching in a bit? The catering staff is a little short-handed. There's a special kind of cruelty that hides behind a polite smile. The kind that sets a trap and then pretends to be surprised when you fall into it." I should have said no, but I was 7 months pregnant in a house full of people who disliked me, and I just wanted to survive the night without any drama. So I nodded. What Victoria didn't tell me was that she had intentionally underhired for the event. This wasn't an accident. It was a calculated act of humiliation. She wanted me to work. She wanted all of her wealthy, judgmental friends to see me as nothing more than the hired help. And so there I was, my baby bump straining against a simple dress, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres and refilling champagne flutes for people dripping in diamonds. Most of the guests ignored me, which was honestly a relief. But then I met Mr. Harrison. He was a man in his 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, and he had the entitled air of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. He started complaining immediately. The appetizers were too cold. His wine glass had a smudge. I apologized politely, but he wasn't looking for a solution. He was looking for a target, someone to belittle to make himself feel powerful, and the pregnant waitress was perfect. As I served him his third glass of wine, my belly gently brushed against the back of his chair. A single tiny drop of red wine splashed onto his pristine white shirt. "Are you kidding me?" he bellowed, loud enough for half the party to turn and stare. "Look what you've done. This shirt costs more than you make in a month." I could feel every eye in the room on me. "Sir, I am so sorry," I stammered. "It was an accident." "An accident?" He laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Look at you. You're a clumsy, worthless embarrassment." Tears welled in my eyes. I looked around helplessly, pleading with my eyes for someone, anyone, to step in. But they all just stared. Victoria was standing nearby, watching the whole thing unfold with a smug little smile. "This is why people like you shouldn't be allowed to work events like this," he continued, his voice rising. "You don't belong here." Frustrated that his power trip wasn't ending quickly enough, he escalated. He grabbed my arm. "Maybe this will teach you to be more careful," he snarled. He gave me a hard shove. I stumbled backward, off balance. And then, in an act of pure, unthinkable cruelty, he kicked out. His expensive leather shoe connected with my side just as I hit the floor. The pain was instant and blinding, but it was nothing compared to the sheer terror that shot through me for my unborn baby. I curled into a ball on the cold floor, sobbing, my hands instinctively covering my belly. The room erupted in shocked gasps, but still no one moved to help me. The most terrifying silence isn't in an empty room. It's the silence of 100 people watching you suffer and choosing to do nothing. It's a silence that tells you that, in their world, you don't matter enough to save. Finally, a young caterer rushed over and helped me to my feet. Victoria strolled over, but instead of helping, she pulled out her phone and started filming. "Chloe, you really should be more careful," she said loudly, for the benefit of her audience. "Accidents like this reflect badly on the family." I staggered to a bathroom, my whole body shaking, and immediately called James. "I need you," I sobbed into the phone. "Something terrible happened." Between gasps, I told him everything. I could hear his sharp intake of breath. "I'm coming home now," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Go to the hospital. Right now. I don't care what it costs. I'll meet you there." At the hospital, after what felt like an eternity, the doctor confirmed that the baby seemed to be okay. The kick had missed my belly by inches. For hours later, James burst into the room. The look on his face when he saw me, pale and trembling in that hospital bed, changed him. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. So I did. When I finished, he took out his phone. "David," he said to the person on the other end, "I need you to start preparing some paperwork." I was confused. David was his corporate lawyer. "Chloe," James said, turning to me. His eyes filled with a cold fury I'd never seen before. "There are some things about my business I haven't told you." He took a deep breath. "My family thinks they're rich because of old money. What they don't know is that over the last 5 years, I have been quietly acquiring the majority stake in almost all of their assets. The estate, the trust funds, the companies they're so proud of. They're all controlled by my investment firm now." I just stared at him, speechless. "I'm not just wealthy, Chloe. I'm one of the richest men in the country." In the span of a single conversation, the entire world tilted on its axis. The man I loved wasn't just the man I thought I knew. He was a king who had been pretending to be a prince, just waiting for the right moment to claim his kingdom. "And Mr. Harrison," James said, a chilling smile on his face, "my lawyer is pulling his financials as we speak. By morning, I will know exactly how to ruin him." The next day, James's revenge began. It was swift and surgical. Mr. Harrison owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. Within hours, his primary financing partner terminated their contracts. The bank holding his business loans suddenly called them in for an emergency review. His high-end suppliers all experienced supply chain issues simultaneously. Anonymous tips about health code violations were sent to food critics, and inspectors found every single one of them to be valid. Meanwhile, the video of Harrison assaulting me had mysteriously found its way online. In less than 48 hours, he went from a respected businessman to the poster boy for rich bullies who attack pregnant women. His wife filed for divorce. But James wasn't finished. He turned his attention to his own family. Victoria's credit cards were suddenly declined. Her trust fund payments ceased. She received an eviction notice for the luxury apartment she lived in, an apartment owned by one of James's shell corporations. When she called him in a panic, he calmly explained her new reality. "You stood by and watched as my pregnant wife was kicked to the ground. You are no longer welcome in my life." His mother tried to intervene. That's when James dropped the final bomb. "Mother, the family fortune you're so proud of? I control it now." The subsequent family meeting was, I'm told, legendary. One by one, they learned that their entire lifestyle was dependent on the man whose wife they had so thoroughly humiliated. 3 months later, our beautiful son was born. I was resting in the hospital room when there was a soft knock on the door. It was Mr. Harrison. He was wearing a simple security guard's uniform. "Mrs. Wagner," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I know I have no right to be here, but I had to apologize. I lost everything, and I deserve to lose everything." He looked at our son, tears welling in his eyes. "I thank God every day that your baby is healthy." Looking at this broken man, I realized something. Revenge feels powerful for a moment, but grace has a power that can actually heal. Not just you, but maybe even the person who hurt you. "I hope you've truly learned from this," I said. 6 months later, I heard that Mr. Harrison was still working as a security guard and volunteering his free time at a women's shelter. Victoria had gotten her first ever job as a receptionist at a non-profit. And us? James and I decided to use our wealth for good. We started a foundation dedicated to helping victims of abuse, turning the ugliest moment of our lives into a source of hope for others. Sometimes the worst things have to happen to teach us the most important lessons. If this story touched you, and you believe that kindness is the ultimate strength, please share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe for more true stories where justice and decency prevail. And remember, no matter how dark things get, you have the power to turn your pain into your purpose.